So fantasy TV is never short on big names. Game of Thrones, The Witcher, House of the Dragon, the algorithm loves pushing those constantly. But some of the best fantasy series ever made are just sitting there, quietly, being ignored, and that genuinely bothers me. Today, we're talking about 7 fantasy series with real imagination, real hearts, and in some cases, real heartbreak. So let's get into it.
Believe in what? Believe in magic.
Alright, right off the top, a show that took every fairy tale character you've ever known and dropped them into a small Maine town with no memory of who they are. Sounds quirky. This show goes places. The cast is genuinely committed. The evil queen alone delivers a performance so layered that every scene she's in crackles with energy. There's a version where she's the main character, and honestly, I'd have watched that too. The structure, bouncing between the real world and the fairy tale world, keeps things constantly moving, and the show genuinely loves its mythology. That enthusiasm comes through in every episode. I'll be honest, the later seasons get a little wild. Some storylines made me genuinely tilt my head, but the core of the show is so warm and inventive that it earns its 7-season run. Started in 2011, ended in 2018, and somehow gets almost zero conversation today. The show is Once Upon a Time, and it deserves way more love than it's currently getting.
Come on, Nick, we have a call.
This next one took one look at high fantasy and said, why go to another world when you can just put the monsters in Portland? That decision turned out to be kinda brilliant. A homicide detective discovers he's descended from guardians who can see mythological creatures living among regular people. These creatures, called Wesson, are everywhere. His city is full of them. And what makes this show work is how seriously it takes itself. No camp, no winking at the audience, just full commitment to its world. And the mythology it develops over 6 seasons is genuinely rich and rewarding. 6 seasons, a real run, a show that had a real audience, and then people just moved on and forgot about it. I recommended this to probably a dozen people, and every single one came back surprised by how much they enjoyed it. The show is Grimm, and it absolutely holds up for a revisit. Quick pause. If you're new here and already adding shows to your list, I'd really appreciate a subscribe and a like. I put out recommendations every week from someone who actually watches this stuff. It helps more than you know. Okay, back to the list.
Quentin, you are not crazy. Magic.
Here's a show I cannot believe more people haven't seen. It takes the magical school concept, yes, that one, and runs it through something much darker, messier, and more emotionally honest than you'd expect. A guy gets into a secret college for magicians. Sounds like a dream, but this show immediately starts asking uncomfortable questions. What does magic actually cost? What happens when the thing you've always wanted turned out to be more complicated than the fantasy version in your head? It uses fantasy as a lens for real human stuff. Grief, mental health, identity, and it does all that while being genuinely funny and wildly unpredictable. 5 seasons on Sci-Fi still gets overlooked in every fantasy conversation. Based on Lev Grossman's trilogy, the adaptation genuinely does the books justice, sometimes surpasses them. The show is The Magicians, one of the most underrated fantasy series ever made. Now, a show that took Arthurian legend and actually found something fresh to do with it. The key was making Merlin young. Not the wise old wizard. Young, awkward, hiding his magic in a kingdom where magic gets you executed. And Arthur, at least at first, is kind of insufferable. The magic of this show is watching these two go from reluctant frenemies to the legendary partnership they're always meant to be. That slow build is handled beautifully over 5 seasons. The BBC got something really special here, charming and funny, and then it hits you emotionally out of nowhere and you're completely unprepared. Colin Morgan as Merlin is one of the most lovable protagonists in all of fantasy TV. 65 episodes, ended in 2012, and I have to remind people it exists every single time I make a fantasy list. The show is Merlin, and it has aged beautifully.
I ran the gauntlet and won.
This one I have to be upfront about. It ended before it was finished. That's gonna matter to some of you. The world this show builds is genuinely impressive. Rich mythology, real stakes, proper high fantasy, pulled from Terry Brooks' legendary Shannara books. Ancient powers, a quest to prevent something catastrophic, world building that rewards attention. And the lead actor went on to become one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. Watching it now, knowing what he became, is a pretty interesting experience. 2 seasons, then canceled. The story wasn't finished. Fair information to have going in. But what is there is worth your time if you love high fantasy and you're okay with a story that stops rather than concludes. The show is the Shannara Chronicles. Imperfect ending and all. Worth watching. This one genuinely hurts to talk about. One of the most fully realized fantasy worlds I've seen on television. A rich setting with its own cultures, politics, history, and magic system. A protagonist who goes from nobody to the most important person alive in a way that feels earned. And a group of morally gray side characters, a heist crew essentially, so entertaining they threaten to steal the show every time they appear. 2 seasons, canceled by Netflix on a cliffhanger. And I know Netflix cancellations are basically a running joke at this point, but this one stings because the show was genuinely great and building towards something bigger. If you enjoy it, pick up Leigh Bardugo's novels. At least there you get a proper ending. The show is Shadow and Bone, and it deserves so much better.
Something that no one else could see.
And here we are, number 1. This one feels different because it's still going, which means you have a real opportunity right now. This show took one of the most beloved book series in the world, gave it real resources, and delivered an adaptation that actually respects the source material. I want you to understand how rare that is. These adaptations fail constantly. This one hasn't. The casting of the lead is one of the best decisions in recent fantasy TV. The kid in this role doesn't just look right, he is right. The sarcasm, the loyalty, the chaos magnet energy. Exactly what fans of Rick Riordan's books hoped for and rarely expected to actually get. The Greek mythology is handled with real care. The adventure lands and the emotional moments hit harder than you'd expect. 2 seasons in. Get in now, make enough noise, and hopefully it sticks around to tell the whole story. The show is Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Add it to your list today. And that's the list. 7 fantasy series, some finished, some canceled too soon, one still going strong, all worth your time. Quick recap. Percy Jackson and the Olympians at 1, Shadow and Bone at 2, the Shannara Chronicles at 3, Merlin at 4, The Magicians at 5, Grimm at 6, and Once Upon a Time at 7. All the streaming info is in that first pinned comment. Let me know in the comments which one you're starting tonight. I genuinely love to know. I'll keep making these as long as y'all keep watching them. See you in the next one.